I was still dressed in black when the attorney said, "Your grandfather named you sole beneficiary, pending compliance." That phrasing alone made my gut sink. People don't add pending compliance unless something is wrong. The office smelled faintly of dust and citrus cleaner, the kind used to disguise age rather than erase it. My tie was choking me. My shoes still carried grit from the cemetery path. My grandfather had been buried less than 2 days ago, and here I was listening to a stranger explain my inheritance like it was a conditional loan. The man across the desk wore a suit that blended into the walls. He flipped pages with too much calm, as if preparing me for disappointment. He stopped and slid something toward me, a small pouch, dark velvet, deliberate. "This was to be given to you immediately," he said. Inside was a silver locket. Old, but cared for. The weight surprised me when I lifted it. It wasn't decorative. It felt used. Worn daily. Like something that had never been optional. "You are required to wear the locket continuously for the next 30 days, the attorney continued, his voice perfectly neutral. "Removal without written authorization constitutes refusal of the terms." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "So? I wear a necklace," I said. "That's it?" He didn't react. "No. That is only the first condition." He turned another page. "To receive the estate, associated holdings, and trust distributions, you must complete what your grandfather referred to as the annual feminine grace evaluation." I stared at him. "I'm sorry," I said. "The what?" He repeated it carefully, like enunciation might make it sane. "You will participate in a monitored 30-day behavioral program. During that period, you will comply with specific requirements regarding appearance, conduct, and assessment." The locket was warm in my hand now. Too warm. "Appearance how?" I asked. There was a pause. Brief. Measured. Long enough for dread to take root. "You will present in a traditionally feminine manner," he said. "This includes attire, grooming, posture, and social interaction, as outlined by your grandfather's appointed oversight body." "Oversight body?" I repeated. "The Committee of Elegance." The name hit harder than it should have. "And who exactly are they?" "You will not be informed." I leaned back, my pulse loud in my ears. "So if I understand this," I said slowly, "I inherit everything only if I spend a month performing someone else's identity while an invisible panel grades me." "Yes." I thought of my grandfather's meticulous habits, how he corrected a napkin fold, how he always said composure was a form of respect. I had never imagined this. Another folder slid across the desk. Inside was a calendar packed tight with locations, appointments, weekly evaluations, gallery visits, something labeled finishing instruction, and a signature line waiting patiently at the bottom. "If you decline," the attorney said, softer now, "the estate will be dissolved and distributed to charities per your grandfather's instructions." "So I comply," I said, "or I walk away empty-handed." He nodded. I turned the locket over in my palm again, and noticed the engraving. Tiny. Nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. One word stood out. Grace. My fingers trembled. "What does that even mean?" I asked quietly. "And who's watching me?" He didn't answer. He only slid the pen closer. I moved back into my grandfather's house because the schedule required it. That made everything worse. The place smelled like polish and old paper. Nothing had shifted. His chair still faced the window. His cup sat exactly where he'd left it. The house felt occupied even in silence. That night, I finally examined the locket properly, tilting it beneath the bedside lamp until the inscription revealed itself. Elegance is obligation. Obligation becomes self. I didn't fully understand it, but it felt directed. Like a warning written in advance. I had just fastened the chain around my neck when the doorbell rang. I froze. No one was scheduled until the next afternoon. The bell rang again, decisive. When I opened the door, she stood perfectly straight, coat immaculate, clipboard in hand, eyes already assessing. "Good evening," she said. "I'm your finishing instructor." "You're early," I said. She checked her watch. "We're already late." She stepped past me before I could respond, surveying the room like a site inspection. Then I heard it. Rolling wheels. She opened the door wider. Delivery workers entered, pushing racks of clothing, stacked shoeboxes, and a tall black case I instantly recognized despite never having owned one. "Wait," I said. "I thought this was posture. Manners. Etiquette." She finally looked at me directly. "Those come later," she said. "Presentation comes first." The workers arranged everything with quiet efficiency and left. The house felt smaller when the door shut. She drew back the garment covers. Dresses. Blouses. Skirts. Soft neutrals. Nothing theatrical. Everything intentional. She opened another case, makeup laid out like instruments. Then she lifted the lid of the tall case. Inside, a wig rested on its stand, styled and waiting. "This is overwhelming," I said. She marked something on her clipboard. "This," she replied, "is the baseline." I stood there, surrounded by fabrics, shoes, cosmetics, that waiting silhouette of hair, and felt the weight of the locket against my chest. 30 days hadn't even started yet. This wasn't play acting. It wasn't metaphor or symbolism dressed up as ritual. This was about altering the surface until the inside had no choice but to respond, about reshaping my body, retraining my movements, and letting strangers decide who I was before I ever spoke. She faced me squarely at last, clipboard tucked under one arm. "We begin tomorrow," she said. 6 sharp. Grooming comes first. "Grooming," I echoed, like the word belonged to someone else. She inclined her head once. "Elegance is built on discipline." After she left, I locked the door and slid down until my back hit it, lungs burning like I'd been running. 30 days. I repeated it like a sentence. 30 days of becoming something unfamiliar. I crossed the room and stopped in front of the mirror, still dressed in black from the funeral, the silver locket stark against the fabric. That was when fear finally arrived, not the kind tied to money or inheritance, but the deeper kind. Fear of erosion. Fear of what would remain when the edges were sanded down. She knocked at exactly 5:58 a.m. Not 6. Not early. Precise. I had slept barely an hour. My body lay still, but my thoughts had sprinted all night, escape routes, loopholes, defiance. When I opened the door and saw her standing there with a folded towel and a sealed razor, I understood none of those thoughts mattered. She stepped inside without greeting. "We start with grooming." Steam filled the bathroom quickly. She adjusted the lights, then unpacked her supplies with quiet ceremony, cream, lotion, cloths folded too neatly to be casual. I folded my arms, instinctively defensive. "Clothing would make more sense," I muttered. She didn't look at me. "Grace begins with skin. You can't layer refinement over neglect." She handed me the towel and gestured to the shower. "Everything," she said. "Leave the brows." I thought about protesting. The look she gave me ended the thought. The water was scalding, grounding. I stayed under it longer than necessary, letting the sound blur my thoughts. When I finally picked up the razor, my hand hesitated. Then I started. Chest. Slow, careful strokes. Clean. Impersonal. Arms next. Then legs. That's when it changed. It stopped feeling procedural and started feeling intimate, invasive, not painful, just exposed. As if I were stripping away more than hair. When I stepped out, I avoided my reflection. She passed me the lotion. Apply generously. Sensitivity is normal. I spread it over skin that didn't feel like mine. When I finally looked up, I barely recognized the shape staring back. Smooth. Quiet. Less angular. Not feminine, just unmarked. Undefined. Approval flickered in her eyes. Then posture. Chin lifted, shoulders eased, spine drawn upward by an imaginary thread. She repositioned my arms as I walked, corrected the angle of my hips. Clothing will respond differently now, she said. Don't resist it. Allow it. She left me with soft underlayers and instructions to rest. After she went, I locked the door again, not out of fear of intrusion, but because I needed silence. I sat on the edge of the tub and studied my leg beneath the light. Pale. Smooth. Unfamiliar. I touched it without flinching. The reflection wasn't a woman. But it wasn't the man from yesterday either. Later, she didn't ask what I wanted to wear. She laid the dress out like an offering. Muted blue. Clean lines. Nothing ornamental. It wasn't designed to attract, it was designed to settle. She handed me sheer tights. Slowly, she said. They tore the first time. I had to start over. Then shapewear. Then the dress, lifted carefully, zipped with precision. It hugged where I didn't expect, floated where I thought it wouldn't. If you collapse into yourself, she said, the fabric will punish you. Then heels. Low, understated, destabilizing. My first step wobbled. She steadied me without comment. Grace is muscle memory, she said. The wig came last. Brown, shoulder length, softly waved. She brushed it with practiced calm, each stroke oddly comforting. She turned me toward the mirror. Look. I didn't laugh. I didn't recoil. I froze. Not because I saw beauty. Not because I saw a woman. But because I saw someone possible. Someone I'd never permitted myself to imagine. Softer, quieter, not fragile, just unguarded. A thought slipped in uninvited. Is this what he saw? The dress didn't feel like disguise. It felt like a question. The next morning, she arrived with a makeup case that opened like a surgeon's tray. Sit. She explained each step sparingly. Primer. Foundation. Powder. Nothing dramatic. Brows softened. Lashes darkened. You're not performing, she said. You're transitioning. When she finished, she handed me a mirror. I noticed the expression first. My jaw wasn't clenched. My brow wasn't braced. I looked neutral. Present. You're softening, she said. Not the face. You. Then voice. Breathing. Pacing. Not higher, slower. Careful. Intentional. By afternoon, I was walking with a book balanced on my head, smiling on cue, speaking about nothing in a voice that didn't rush to defend itself. You'll need a name, she said. She offered 3. I chose one that didn't belong to him. That night, the wig came off. The makeup disappeared. The locket stayed. For the first time since the will reading, my chest didn't ache. My thoughts didn't sprint. I slept. The gallery downtown looked nothing like I expected, no sign, no announcement, just a numbered door between townhouses. My heels clicked too loudly on the pavement. I held my purse strap like an anchor. Inside, everything hushed. A woman in black looked up. Oh, thank God, she said. You're early. She thought I belonged. I nodded. I followed. I spoke when prompted. I listened. I didn't crumble. And when I left, no one stared. No one questioned. No one corrected me. At home, I was still clumsy. Loud. Rushed. But there, beside art, under lights, in tailored fabric, I moved without apology. It wasn't confidence. It was the absence of shame. And when my finishing coach paused mid-lesson and said, "You've stopped fighting the clothes," I looked down and realized she was right. A slate gray skirt cut clean and narrow. A pale violet blouse fastened with pearl snaps. I'd chosen them myself, lifted them from the rack without hesitation, pressed the seams, hung them neatly the night before. When she noticed, I didn't pretend it was accidental. "I didn't want to ask today," I said. "I just wanted it to feel right." She studied me for a long moment, an expression passing across her face that I couldn't name at first. Pride, yes, but threaded with something heavier. "You're no longer dressing to convince," she said gently. "You're dressing to exist." The words landed harder than I expected. I glanced down at my hands. My nails were shaped now, bare but intentional, soft curves where rough edges used to be. And before I could stop myself, I admitted the truth that had been coiled in my chest for days. "I think I'm afraid of what happens when the month ends." She didn't answer. She simply turned a page in her notebook. From that day on, she stopped laying outfits on the bed. Instead, every morning, she asked the same question. "What do you feel like wearing today?" And when I opened the closet, I realized I wasn't selecting protection anymore. I wasn't choosing camouflage. I was choosing her. And the more often I did, the more distant he became, less solid, less certain, like a name I no longer answered to instinctively. The committee never announced themselves. They didn't need to. They appeared quietly, an older woman watching from the edge of the gallery, offering a small nod. A man in a charcoal jacket whose questions cut a little too precisely. Compliments that sounded observational rather than kind. My posture, my restraint, the way I spoke without filling every silence. I knew I was being evaluated. But by then, I wasn't adjusting for them. I was simply living as her. Marin eventually asked me to lead a walkthrough alone. She said I had a steadiness that made people listen. I thanked her politely, but inside something bloomed. I remembered my first visit, the trembling steps, the shallow breathing, the fear that someone would call me out. Now I crossed the gallery floor with ease. People smiled, not with curiosity, but recognition. One evening, the coach arrived to find me reorganizing my accessory drawer. I hadn't planned to. I was just doing it. Sorting scarves by tone. Separating brushes. Adjusting the fit of a blouse I loved. "You've claimed this," she said quietly. I stopped without realizing I'd moved at all. She smiled, truly smiled. "That's the point." Then she handed me an envelope. Final evaluation. 3 days. The words struck like a sudden drop in temperature. I nodded, thanked her, stayed composed. But after she left, I sat in front of the mirror as I always did and began undoing the day, slowly. Earrings. Necklace. Wig. Makeup. The first cotton pad wiped color from one cheek, leaving the other intact. One side intentional. One side bare. That was when I broke, not loudly, not dramatically. Just tears sliding down both halves of my face. I didn't want to erase her. When the last of the color faded from my lips, they looked thinner. Familiar. Not wrong, but not mine anymore. And in that moment, something terrifying and beautiful settled in my chest. I didn't want the test to end. Not because of the approval. Not because of the inheritance. Because I didn't want to lose the version of myself who moved gently through the world. Who breathed instead of braced. Who didn't sharpen every word like a blade. That night, I fell asleep with half my makeup still on, the locket warm against my collarbone. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of judgment. I was afraid of disappearing. The call came mid-morning. The lawyer's voice was even, distant, familiar. "The committee has reached a decision," he said. "They would like to meet with you." I dressed without instruction. A navy wrap dress, soft, structured, mine. When I arrived at the office, I didn't tremble. I knew how to sit now. How to breathe into my spine. The room was full. Faces I recognized. Faces I didn't. The lawyer stood and read from a prepared statement. You did not meet the full criteria outlined in the will. The words felt unreal. In execution, he clarified, the estate will be dissolved and distributed according to charitable directive. I nodded. My hands stayed calm in my lap. My heart cracked quietly. 30 days. No house. No trust. No gallery shares. And yet, I wasn't ruined. I stood, thanked them, and walked out, heels tapping softly like punctuation at the end of a chapter. At home, I didn't rush to undress. I didn't retreat to the mirror. I sat in her clothes, breathing easily, and understood something simple and final. The test was over. But she wasn't. The coach returned once more. No clipboard. No instructions. Just a folder. Your grandfather wrote this years ago, she said. He asked me to give it to you when everything was finished. Inside was a letter, handwritten in his precise script. If you're reading this, you've already met her, the part of you I always recognized. She was never fragile. Never false. Never something to hide. I didn't raise you to inherit property. I raised you to inherit yourself. I read it again. Then again. Everything finally aligned, the locket, the rules, the silence, the watching. He hadn't been testing me. He'd been introducing me. That evening, I returned to the gallery, not as an experiment, not as an assistant filling in, but as myself. Marin asked if I'd stay. She said I carried the space well. I said yes. Not for approval. Not for legacy. Because I felt whole there. I kept the locket. I kept the name, not out of obligation, but choice. And a week later, standing at the same door where this began, I smoothed my skirt, pressed color to my lips, and stepped into the street. Not to convince. Not to disappear. Not to prove anything. Just to live. The 30 days were finished. But she was only beginning.